Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the first meeting of the work group for the Microplastics Monitoring Playbook. And for today, we're going to do some brief introductions, and then we'll be rolling into what our goals and vision are for this group, a brief timeline, and we want to get feedback from you all. That's going to be a very important part of this group, is serving as a forum for feedback for a lot of these guidelines that are coming along statewide and otherwise. And so we'll talk about that. Then we'll roll into a little bit of introduction to Zotero, and then we will jump into the microplastics data portal with Shelley, and a demo by on the draft, the beta version by Win, and then we'll continue on with some Q&A. So I'm glad you could all join us for today. And just as a reminder, here's where we are in the scheme of things in the big picture. You've got the California Water Quality Monitoring Council as the origination of the Microplastics Subcommittee, which falls under the Trash Monitoring Workgroup, which is led by Shelley Moore. And there are a bunch of different subcommittees under the Trash Monitoring Workgroup: encampments, citizen science, and data standardization. And microplastics is the most, I believe it's the most recent subcommittee. And under that, we have two work groups: the Consumer Messaging Workgroup, which is mostly focused on drinking water, and then the Microplastics Monitoring Playbook Workgroup, and that's us. So do we have any questions, first of all, about that structure, or who we are, or what we're doing today? I don't want to go on too far into the weeds if we don't have that kind of clear. Okay, great. I actually can't see hands raised, Shelley. If there's anyone that has their hands raised, please feel free. Okay, good. So I'm going to back up to our timeline. So first, what we're going to discuss is our Microplastics Monitoring Playbook Workgroup vision and goals for 2023 and beyond. And I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and so we can just talk about that. I don't have a lot of slides for today. It's going to be mostly discussion and kind of just sharing. So when we started the Microplastics Subcommittee, there was a thought that, we have different groups that are doing, just drinking water, or just, environment and going to the ocean, and that we needed to bring everyone together. That was Scott and Shelley's vision early on, and it was very exciting to see the subcommittee formed. So what the playbook is attempting to do is to bring all of these all this information together into a very user-friendly format and place that we can discuss and better understand what's going on, and kind of be a go-to. And so we have a lot that we have to accomplish, and it's pretty exciting. And so the playbook originated from the Trash Monitoring Playbook. In that structure that you saw, the Trash Monitoring Work Group, actually Shelley through SFEI and in partnership with others, formed the plastics monitoring. I'm butchering it. Sorry, Shelley. The plastic monitoring playbook. Trash Monitoring Playbook, sorry. And thank you, Scott, just put a link to it. And that is kind of our vision of what the microplastics monitoring playbook would be. We've kind of presented this in past meetings, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time into that. And we've got over 51 participants, so I don't think we're going to do a round robin of introductions. But if you would like to, it would be great for us to know who's attended this meeting. We didn't have a registration or anything, so if you'd like to put your name in the chat, either publicly or privately, and contact information, we will start a mailing list of this work group. And if you have any particular interest of focus, please add that to the chat. And maybe other people will see, oh, you have interest in that too. It's kind of a great way to start getting folks together. So thank you. I can see people starting to add to that. I really appreciate that. Hi, Terry. So anyway, that is our goal for the Microplastics Monitoring Playbook, taking a cue from the Trash Monitoring Playbook, which is very much question-based and looking at details of study design and helping inform that process. So that's kind of what we will be doing. And all of our slides, if you saw in the meeting announcement, you see links to our work group folder, and all of the previous subcommittee presentations are in that folder. And that's where you'll find all of the information that we've updated so far. But this is our first standalone meeting, and we will be having regularly scheduled meetings, and we'll roll that out soon. So anyway, going back to, I want to make sure I don't jump off topic. So the goal of this work group is to bring everything together. And first up is drinking water, because we have legislative mandates for drinking water. And through all of the surveys that we did 2 surveys related to this work group, but trying to get feedback about what you're interested in and what you see the need for. The overwhelming response was drinking water and method standardization. And so that's kind of where we're going to focus. The timeline is perfect for that. So we're going to be, our goal is to get something to out for review late summer this year. And so we need work group participation to help make that happen. And so that is our focus for the rest of 23. Will be mostly drinking water, and also things that span across matrices. Study design, how are you putting together your study, whether it's a long-term monitoring or one-time snapshot. There's some basic statistical rules or guidelines that you need that are helpful to follow, so that you don't spend a ton of time and money on a project and end up getting results that you can't really use, because they're no different. One treatment isn't different than another. So that is pretty much our timeline and goal. Shelley, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is looked at as being a living document, so that it's going to be added to through time. We can add different things based on the type of matrix. And we're hoping to bring it together all in one central location, whether that be a central website or a link off of another website, whatever it may be. We want to have a place where everybody can go and find information on this. I know that there's already a project in progress looking at methods, specific methods. So it won't be necessarily methods based, although we will add that we can add that afterwards. But we're looking at creating a playbook that includes anything you might want to, any question you might want answered regarding doing studies on microplastics. So that's all I would add, Shelley.
That's perfect. Thank you, Shelley. And yeah, as she said, those questions, they may not arise right away in the written form. We may need to have some forums and some discussions, and we want to develop kind of an online go-to spot that may reside in different areas, but somewhere you can go and have that kind of feedback when you don't have to wait for a quarterly meeting. We can have that kind of access. So if anyone has a platform in mind, there's several out there that we've been considering, but we would like to get everyone together and have that type of community that we're building about microplastics. So the next thing we're going to roll into is the focus on drinking water. We need your help. So we need to form a subcommittee of our work group that's willing to contribute to the drinking water focused installment of the playbook that'll be coming out late this summer for review by all of you, and then for use by the state. So we've gotten feedback. Scott, as long as you're here, do you want to say anything about the playbook or about this first installment, or what your vision is for it?
Yeah, so the playbook, we really want to be fairly comprehensive, like one-stop shop for all of the components that folks will need to do the sampling all the way to the analysis and data upload for microplastics in drinking water to prepare for the orders that are going to be sent out later this year. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel on a lot of these aspects. Like, we already have some groups that are going to be delivering standard operating protocols for sampling, and we already have the SOP for the analysis. Wynn's going to be talking about the data portal, but there's missing components in there, like the overall quality assurance. We might want a general section on that. Other types of like harmonization or like reporting standards, we might want to include a specific section on that that's not covered in the other sections. And there might also just be like pro tips that are missed in a lot of these other SOPs, or where to find equipment for sampling. Those sort of those little extra bits that will make it easier for everyone to follow along, and have that be a living document that we can upload, that we can revise as we improve the sampling and analysis. I think that would be really useful for the community, not just in California, but as other states and countries start monitoring, they're going to look towards us as well.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you so much, Scott. That really helps bring everything together. Appreciate that. Okay. Terry, questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Hi, everybody. Thank you. So if this is going to be a living document, but it's also a handbook that's going to be adopted by the state board, how do we edit it and keep it updated? Is there a procedure for that, or is it not going to have to be adopted?
I don't think we'll necessarily need to adopt it. It's more of like a support guidance document that will be like officially maintained by the Water Quality Monitoring Council, and it won't need to be formally adopted by the State Water Board. We have a bit of precedent for how we've updated the trash monitoring playbook, and so maybe Shelley Moore could provide a little bit of context on how we did that. But it's up to us. I mean, how we want to deal with this. Having like a living document, like a Google Doc, could be kind of messy, especially if we want to go back and like cite things like, well, we followed the protocol from 3 months ago, but it's changed now. So we might want to have a protocol for when do we upload like a finalized PDF that goes to review, and then have those be archived so you can look back to what it looked like a few months ago.
Does that help, Terry?
Well, not really. Okay, so this is a playbook to provide resources for embarking on this monitoring program for the state, that could be used as a reference material for other states, or even internally, like, okay, we just say we just purchased something. We could literally piggyback off of another public water system or state agencies purchase and eliminate the need for bidding and some other things. But if we don't have a reputable like reference, it would make it a little bit more tricky to do that. So I feel like, or if you're using a standard operating procedure and it's in the playbook, and you need a source for that for your quality manual because you're ELAB certified, then it needs to have sort of like a version on it. And I think it might be easier for us if we just have a scheduled update to be able to incorporate changes with a version number, and a most recent date, so that we could refer back on that reference to, help us.
So you bring up some very good points, Terry. And I would say, without getting too into the weeds of the specifics of regulatory requirements, and I'd say that this group is a forum for that type of feedback that can be placed, we can discuss through this forum, and Scott can bring these concerns to, considerations of modifying the SOPs if there's something that you found that's, that needs work. But the playbook itself would be, the hot tips and that kind of thing, and also the forum. So if there were a major version, yeah, we would definitely have like a document that says, what the different changes, updates were to the playbook, 2023 drinking water installment 1, 2024, adding whatever SOP or tips, that kind of thing, a major table with that. But then I think the methods themselves are a separate process and document, and this would be the voice to help inform that. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, and I like Nick's comment in the chat, which seems like a pretty good solution, which is basically provide it, represent it to the water board as an informational item to get public support outside of our subcommittee, and then we have an annual update. And so we have that, like the 2023 version, 2024 version, all that.
Yeah, and the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that we are doing this because we see the need. There's a lot of different information out there, but this is kind of in-kind services for a lot of us. And so I can't, personally be held to, a annual update for the playbook. That would be something that I would be coordinating with the work group to put in that time to do that. It's not a state paid activity. Does that make sense? So this work group is what we all put into it. So I hate to do a requirement for an annual update report, because that's not for what we signed up for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we could find a solution.
Yeah.
Thank you for the sort of background. Okay, so the second question I had is Shelley mentioned that, Shelley Moore mentioned that that there's a methods project ongoing, and I'm just curious what you're talking about. Is it the sampling methods project?
Yes, that's what I was talking about. I've heard that there's another project, and Scott, you could probably talk more about it than I could.
Yeah, so this is the project that was part of the pilot phase discussed during the policy handbook, where we're contracting with SQUIRP, Brown and Caldwell, and University of Toronto to develop guidance for the sampling protocol using the inline filtration, and that includes the schematics for the equipment and the protocols for how to run it, software, that sort of thing. And that should be done. As early as like late summer. The contract for that is still held up in our department, so they're sort of waiting on us to finish that. But we'll be providing updates as soon as we have something an update on. At this stage, it's still early days with that.
Okay, so then the project hasn't started yet, is that right?
Sort of. I mean, we're basically just waiting for like the contract to finally go through, but we already have the equipment. We already know where we're going to sample. They're basically it could start as early as next month, the actual sampling.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
And I saw Leslie had her hand up. We're still within schedule for our meeting. This is great feedback. So Leslie.
Okay, hi, Leslie DeBalian from the San Diego County Water Authority. And so I actually just was wondering about maybe taking a step back and just thinking about like, what is the, like, are our priorities in terms of like, is there certain research we need? Like like is really moving forward with drinking water is the priority? Is that what the group recommends? Maybe it's something we want to consider focusing a little more on the coordination between, in the environment and drinking water without necessarily pushing drinking water forward, without this group kind of talking about it and thinking about priorities and purpose and what makes sense to move forward first on. So, that I think, at least to me, that would be helpful in terms of like, what is the purpose and what makes sense for us to, to focus on it first.
Yes. So, so that's, you raised some good points. And so the reason why we're focusing on drinking water is because there's a SB 14.2 mandates 4 years of monitoring of drinking water. And there's no way around that. That is happening. And so to better inform that process and the people, the entities who will be beholden to do that monitoring, it's critical that we get the drinking water portion together and informed by your feedback as soon as possible. So that's why we're front loading that without a whole lot of discussion outside of what we've already heard from the surveys and in discussion with people who are willing to do this work and to lead these groups. We know that that's up and coming in the need for microplastics. So, but also the other need, that why I say it's not matrix specific, is a lot of information that will inform how to carry out these studies and this monitoring in terms of the sampling and the analysis and the reporting. All of that needs to come together into a useful information. So that's the other focus that's expands beyond drinking water. So that's kind of our initial push. And we do want to get something out this year, this late summer, for Scott to be able to use. So does that help, Leslie?
I mean, I do understand that there's, the legislation have requirements for 4 years of testing and reporting. I just, I'm not a lab expert, I gotta say it, but I, I'm in the water world, and I certainly have more expertise in like public health and environmental health. So, I always wonder about just moving forward from that perspective, and so in terms of just understanding what information we're collecting, but beyond that, just so moving forward in terms of monitoring, is drinking water, is that going to be the most expeditious way to start collecting data? Does that make sense in terms of maybe that's simpler type of monitoring, or maybe like a more critical type of monitoring to start with? I mean, obviously human health is important. So clearly I've prioritized that, but I just from the bigger picture. So, and if that's what the group wants to do, again, I totally understand that. I just want to make sure that we're asking those questions.
I understand that, and it's great to raise that. And we will be delving more into details of, Shelley and I have presented kind of an outline of the playbook and the types of things that we're covering in past meetings. So for the subcommittee. And so we're not going to spend time on that today, but when we are starting to discuss the details of, okay, who's doing what and what are we focusing on, that's, we can delve into that, the issues you've raised a little bit more. But like I said, drinking water is the focus because of SB 1422. It has a timeline, a legislative mandate. It makes everything less important because of that. So by default. Now, does that mean that there's no other monitoring going on right now statewide for microplastics? not mandated, but yes, there's a lot of other monitoring going on and a lot of other studies that are funded. Like the OPC has a statewide wastewater microplastics study. So we'll be finding out more about that in the next year or two. So yeah, there are things that are ongoing and that we will be bringing to your attention through this work group and also through the subcommittee in general. Things like our next subcommittee focus will be contamination, microplastics contamination, and how to think about that. And so, which is also transcends every matrix. It's more than just one. So great points. And I'm going to stick to our timeline. It's 1:30. We're going to focus now on Zotero. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to that. And okay. And this is a live share that I'm doing for you guys. This is my own live screen, not a PowerPoint. So you can see that if you do a search for microplastics in Zotero.org, you will see a wide variety of different groups. Our group, in order to share the actual resource, not just the citation, but the actual paper, you have to have it has to be a private group, which means you have to ask to be invited. And all you do is click on it and you ask, and then we can do that. So if I scroll down, you can see the Microplastics Monitoring Playbook. It has a little description that it's a work group for the Microplastics Monitoring Subcommittee, which is, just names the structure that we already talked about, and that it's a public group, meaning anyone who searches can see that it's there and that it's closed membership. If you click on that hyperlink, you get some listings, and look who's been busy. Okay, so we actually have, and then if you want to see all the items in that group, you click on the group library, and that'll take you to this online forum. This so it shows a lot of the different groups that I'm in, and all of you will have access to this. And if you click on you can see all the little icons. That means that the paper is there in this resource. If you look at that, attachments, there's the paper right there. So what this means for us is that as our work group is working on things, we can cite as we write using Zotero. We can keep track of our citations. We can add citations for consideration, and you have editing rights as you're doing this. So it's really powerful to be able to collaborate as a group as we're making this document, and also just to share information about different things. So, and we can add subfolders. Right now, I put some, so the top level gives you everything that's in the subfolders, but then the subfolders, you get the subset of, here's some analytical methods comparison papers, stuff about the atmosphere, biosolids, and drinking and ambient water. And so I have a ton of references, as does Scott, and we all do. And this doesn't show, so if you look on my library, here's all my stuff in my personal, this is not, you can't share this kind of stuff, but if I were to go to trash and debris, microplastics, here's Scott's holdings. I still have to incorporate stuff on risk assessment, study methods and designs. And so what we're going to do is, and then I just take these and I drag them into the group library, and that's how I've done that so far. So anyway, it's a useful tool, and it's very transparent. You can get to it through Zotero.org, and it is for managing all of these thousands of references that we come across literally every month. And you can actually write notes on the, in the editing, you can, for, oh, we want to include this in this chapter or this version. And there are also, which is really exciting to me, group discussions enabled through Zotero. So we can actually hit new discussion and say, introduction, and I can say, something like that. I hit send, and then now we have a little bit of a record of discussions in that library, and only the people that are in the group can see that discussion. So right now we've got 5 members, and we'll be, which is basically the leads for the Microplastics Subcommittee and the work groups. So we're going to be adding to that, and we can have discussions about these references there, and eventually we'll have a spot for larger discussions outside the references. So are there any questions about Zotero in general, and how we intend to use that? I'm gonna get out of my sharing. Great. Okay. So then the next thing up on our agenda for today is talking about the microplastics data portal with Shelley. And Shelley, why don't you go ahead, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Shelley. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm not going to take a whole lot of time because Wynn is going to demo much of this, but I will show you. I will talk a little bit about it, introduce it to you a little bit. All right, so you've probably seen this slide before. Scott's presented it many times. We're really focused on starting with drinking water with the data portal, and there's a need for it because there's going to be many people submitting data, drinking water microplastics data. I'll give you a little bit of background. There's a lot of studies going on microplastics. I think if you look at the publications that are coming out, it's just humongous, and there's a lot of different studies, a lot of different methods, a lot of different data that everybody's collecting. It's all over the place. It's not anything you can take and compare and look at in any significant way most of the time. There's been studies on microplastics, a large one recently done in the last few years, where they brought the data together in a similar format. There's an information management plan that I wrote to bring all that data together, and we're following up on that kind of concept to create a new portal. The Microplastics Data Portal project is basically going to be an open source data portal. We're going to talk to people. We want everybody to talk to us and have input on what this portal is going to look like. Again, we're starting with drinking water, folks, and this project is supported by the Possibility Lab out of UC Berkeley and the State Water Board as well. And collaborators are many. I've listed us here, Moore Institute for Plastic Pollution Research and SFEI as 2 of the primary collaborators, but we've got additional people that are working on this project. So we want to make sure that we collect all the data that's necessary to know that we're comparing the right information when we receive data in this portal. So, whoops. The Water Board has even referred to this project within its most recent policy handbook, and we're excited to be working with them and have this as part of what's going to be available for people to submit microplastics data. So what Wynn's going to really share right now is some of the tools that have been worked on. He's been working hard on them with others. We actually have some other people working on these. We've got a set of grad students from Cal State University Long Beach who are working on creating some data visualizations through maps in this portal as part of their master's program, for example. So we've got a ton of people working on this. He's going to show you 3 different tools: the microplastic image exploration tool, the data validation portal, and the data visualization portal. And I will turn it over to him at this time.
Thanks, Shelley.
I'll turn it down.
Thanks. Share my screen. Let's see. Hopefully everybody can see that. Shelley, just plug in some reverb. I'm gonna paste in the chat some questions that I have for all of you. Thanks, Shelley. I think that's working now. Some questions that I have for all of you to think about. This is a beta test, so our goal for today is to walk away with a better understanding of what the community needs from these advancements in software specifically for microplastics research. I'm also going to paste these links in the chat so that you can follow along if you'd like. So the first link is to our data validator portal. Here you can find all of the smiling faces of our current crew that's been working on the portal. When you go to, so let's go ahead and do an example. So you can download a sample rules file and a sample data set. And these files are really just CSV files. So for example, here we have a CSV file for the valid data set. We also have a CSV file for the rules that go into that. And if I open these up in something like Excel, it looks a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to read. You can see like line by line, here's a rule. The shape values need to be either fragments or fibers or fragments. Source can only be tap water or bottled water. And so that makes it a little bit easier to kind of understand what is going on in the background when we're validating our data. And data validation is the first step to making sure that we have standardized data and making sure that our data can be used. If you're following along, you'll go ahead and go through these rules options. So we actually have some accredited, we have rules for microplastics in drinking water from accredited labs that we've built out. We also have another project with the National Renewable Energy Labs called Water Pact, where they're surveying plastic in rivers. We've also built out some rules for them. So those are kind of built-in rules. But today we're just going to do the manual ones because I think these rules are a little bit simpler to understand. So we can click that rules file. And then we can also click the valid data. And if you have a valid data set, you'll get a message like this. It says basically here, oh, we need to go in dark mode. I forgot about this bug. So if we deselect errors only, we can see that there are all these successful rules that have been validated. If we wanted to check out an invalid example, I could show you what that looks like too. So here we have an invalid example. And invalid data will basically have a user interface here where you can click through the different invalidated rules. So here we're looking at the shape column being invalid. It's supposed to be either fibers or fragments, but some of them are NAs. This is actually filtering the whole data set for just the rules that are the rows that are violating the rule. Then we could click this one and see, okay, these ones are problematic. Also, when we uploaded the valid data, we can download a certificate. And when we do this, we are able to use this certificate. We were able to verify this certificate as something that happened because we save this on a MongoDB database. So we basically save a copy of the certificate. So then if anybody says, hey, 10 years ago, I uploaded my data, it looked good, now it doesn't, what's going on? We could validate that previous thing happened using these certificates. So that's kind of cool too. There's also a little login feature. This is an advanced feature only for people who have access to be able to share data to data.ca.gov. So we actually have a backend API that links in. And if you have a key, you can click that login, put in your credentials there, and then the data will automatically go up to data.ca.gov. We're doing a bunch of other databasing stuff on the back end. Feel free if you're exploring this and have some comments, you could drop them in the chat or wait until after and raise your hand. Okay, I will move on to the next one. So this one's the Microplastics Image Explorer. The goal of this is to visualize images. So this was developed, Laura Markley at Syracuse is kind of the originator of this idea of a web portal for visualizing images of microplastics. And we currently have about 10,000 images or something like that in here. Many of them are thanks to Leah, who shared the images. And this Microplastics Image Explorer allows you to query images by different pieces of data. So you can filter, for example, here, you want to find all the green particles. I selected green. That's showing me all the green particles. Well, what if I just want to find green particles from Gwen Latin and Charlie Moore's database? Now we can filter those too. So I think that these kind of tools have a lot of different uses. And I'm interested to hear how y'all might be interested in using them. We also have a data analysis portal. This one's pretty basic at this point, mainly because data synthesis is extremely hard in this field because there haven't been standards. Up until now, we're like just developing the standards. So basically what we can do with the data, the easiest thing to do anyways, is just to plot it on the map. So we actually went through, Hannah Happich reviewed, I don't know, it was like 60 manuscripts, pulled out about 600 data points on microplastics in drinking water around the world from peer-reviewed studies. We actually already have this data up online. You can find it at data.ca.gov. And microplastics in drinking water. So I'll paste this in the chat too. We want people to use this data. It's all from peer-reviewed studies. So if you are interested in researching drinking water, microplastics in drinking water, we've aggregated the vast majority of the manuscripts already and try to clean up the data. And we actually use the microplastics data portal to validate this data. We have the rules here. So it's all like really specifically standardized. So if you want to add to it and stuff, you can too. Let's see, with the data analysis portal, currently the only real functionality that we have is you can click these points and then just show what the raw data is. We're envisioning a future data analysis to be something like a heat map that kind of tells people something about their risk or of exposure for microplastics in their drinking water. We'd love to see some more data points over here in California. We have very few. I don't even think there's any actually. That one's in Tijuana. So we have a lot of the map to fill up over here. And it's really exciting times to be involved in that. So yeah, I'll pause there. I kind of went through this whirlwind tour, but open to questions. I saw a couple comments coming into the chat. One was about what stage of development this is in. And so all of these portals are very beta, like we've been developing them for about 6 months now. Our timeline to completion of the portals is the end of the year. So we have another 10 months. We would love to have other people participate, especially people who are data experts or coders. That would be awesome to get in touch. So thank you a lot for that question. Let's see. Okay, not seeing any other questions or comments coming in. Maybe there's some hands raised.
I had a comment.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is all really cool. I
Thanks.
have to admit though, I just don't know how I would be able to use it, because it seems, for the, coding and the things that you have to do to get to it is so
Right.
complicated to me. It's not my thing.
Right.
I would need, an IT person to help navigate it. I think a dashboard with buttons that had pictures on them might be something I could use. I'm just curious what the peer review process is on this I know this is beta, but just to start thinking about it, to be able to validate those data, later, is pretty important, and what the QA on the data are gonna sort of look like.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's great feedback, that it seems a little bit overwhelming currently. Hopefully as we continue to refine it, it will seem less so. And we anticipate, especially for the data validation portal, for example, I don't anticipate non-data experts or people who don't have data skills will be able to use that tool, unfortunately, because you have to have some understanding of like how data sets are structured and how rows are queried and how to look up stuff in spreadsheets. But for some of these other ones, like this one here, certainly I imagine non-data experts using this, the data analysis portal, certainly. So yeah, thank you for that. And in terms of how we're doing the QA and QC, so this is these rules files are really the QA QC component. They are the stopgap. So no data actually even will come to us until it's perfect, until it passes these rules. And likely there will be, currently there's about 60 different rules that we've written up for the data sets. We have a data schema that's, I'll give you an example here, actually, one sec. Find this. So this is the rules file for drinking water accredited labs currently as it stands. And we're going to be doing and your question about the peer review was really great, because this is part of the peer review here, introducing this tool to everybody here who are experts in microplastics research or in some aspect of the domain. And we are also going to be interacting with drinking water agencies specifically, especially the data professionals, to make sure that this is good. So there's going to be, the next 6 months are going to be focused mainly on peer review and back and forth. We've already gotten some peer review, some comments. We've refined the tool from those. And then, so yeah, anyways, so this table here is basically, this is the stopgap to make sure that data fits a standard. And it's pretty extensive already, but it'll likely get even more so as we go on.
Thanks, Win.
Thank you.
When I first saw this this preview, I think it's wonderful to see this at this stage. I'm used to relational databases, Microsoft Access and SQL Server, that kind of thing. And I mean, I do a fair amount of R coding, but I have this database background. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, but how are you getting the data in, how are laboratories getting their data into these formats to upload? And so, and I see that, the descriptions with the R code, I can see an intermediary need, which I think, like Wynn said, this forum is a perfect area to start giving those types of suggestions from end users. So if you are a drinking water laboratory who foresees submitting data and using this, needing to use this tool, because this is the way for your data to get into to the for microplastics data submissions, note that in the chat. So you'll need to, if you're interested in more discussions about beta testing, or maybe a subgroup to look just at that. I think that'd be a great kind of subcommittee.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add on to what you had said, your comment about that really inspired me. I spent the last week developing a way to transform these rules files into a formatted Excel spreadsheet that has like conditional formatting and data validation and stuff like that in it. So yeah, that is in the works right now. I've just kind of got the alpha version of that working now. So hopefully that will help people who are like first collecting the data to make sure that their data is pretty clean before they end up uploading it here. And some data checks, like checking whether or not a image is correct or a spectrum is correct or something like that, those are going to be probably won't be able to do those kind of checks inside of the Excel spreadsheet, but we'll figure out some ways to incorporate those into here because we want to capture that kind of data too.
Wonderful. Yeah, here. Okay. We have a question from Terry. Are the data in this database from microscopy observations, or will they also be from spectroscopy confirmations? Good question. Otherwise,
yeah.
In other words, are they all, are they just, it looks like a mixture of visual observation and chemical confirmation via IR.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the current method that's currently hosted on the Water Board website has a combination of both. So there's microscopy, photographing of every single particle. So like, for example, let's see, this portal, like you would have these kind of images. And then there's spectroscopy as a validation step, because sometimes we don't know whether or not these particles are plastic, and we may want to know what types of plastic they are.
Right, that could be a green pea, right?
Yeah, could be.
Right.
Yeah, I see Leah has a.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just thinking about the user friendliness aspect of this, and for Tomex and doing data templates for that. Late last week, I just figured out how to do some really cool stuff in Excel, because for that data portal, I rely on Excel for people to enter the data. And I think that might be, at least for now, that's what people are most familiar with.
Yeah.
And doing some like conditional cells so that it kind of keeps, hopefully, you have like, the whole data checker, but it keeps it even tidier while they're entering it, because you're only allowed to like enter so many things into different cells. I don't know. Scott is beta testing it for me right now, so he can tell me if it's horrible or not. But maybe that like might be an avenue to explore, even though it's outside of the code and everything. But Excel
Yeah.
is usually the thing that people are most familiar with.
That's what we were discussing last week during the user group meeting too, Leah, was having some constraints and also just feeding into whatever instrument outputs are being used, starting with that, and then having additional fields that would need to be entered with constraints like that. Drop down lists or things that people could use, and seeing how users operate to make that, whether it's some kind of app or form or something, a web page where they can go to and upload their stuff, or just a template. There's a lot of different avenues, but yeah, Excel is definitely a go-to.
Yeah, the thing is, it's like a whole, at least for me, I'm pretty good at Excel, but it's kind of like a whole new thing to learn to do in an advanced kind of way. And the other trick is, it's just like with the data checker, you kind of have to predict all the funky ways that people are going to try to enter data, which can be quite the exercise in and of itself. So
Yeah, and I see a relational database fitting into that as well, with lookup lists for, I mean, if you go back to CDIN, their cross-reference lists, or Southern California BITE regional monitoring information management plans of I don't know if we had one for BITE 18, but in previous surveys we've had a comprehensive plan of every data table that is going to be submitted, and all of the lookup lists for all of the fields that are constrained, and rules for all of those. And so it's very much into something that Shelley Moore actually worked on for years. So that's what I'm used to, because I've been a BITE participant. So things like that, when I see this kind of stuff, it screams to me, IM plan and CDIN, that kind of thing. That being said, it's funny because when I look at this, I think, oh, if only it were more like CDIN. But everyone that you hear talk to about CDIN says, CDIN, I hate CDIN, you can't work with it, it's so confusing. And I'm wondering if it's a database mindset versus other mindset. And I'd love to get everyone together and go, what's broken and what works and what doesn't? Because like when I think of CDIN, I'm like, okay, relational data tables that are really big, but they have constraints and they have separate templates for that. And you have a template you can download to help you enter the data, and then, so that I think the biggest part is just renaming your fields to match with the upload fields. So if you can kind of do that in the app or something, I don't know. I think a database person has no problem just going export as this, and it's done in a query that you can always use, or in R. So a lot of things, fun things to discuss, and we can definitely have some, subcommittee meetings about that if Wynn would like, or you can have, we can advertise your own meetings with your group that you want to do that. But I am very curious if you've had issues with CDIN, if you've experienced an issues with CDIN, and you have feedback about things to avoid when doing data submissions, I would love to hear that in the chat, or just like say that you have that information, not the information itself, but just so that we can ping you for future meetings, and just to be aware of that kind of stuff and bring that all together in our playbook as well to feed into all of this, because that's what all this is all about. Okay, thank you so much, Wynn. Did you have anything else?
Thanks. No, that's all for me. Feel free to get in touch if you all would like to collaborate on that project or have any other comments or questions.
Great.
I'll drop my email in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you. You want to stop your screen sharing? Great. Thank you. So now we're in the portion of the meeting that's Q&A and next steps. So I want to just start with our most recent presentation. Are there more questions about the microplastics data portal? And I think it was really interesting that just it was great the introduction that Shelley gave. It really gave perspective to what we were talking about before with why are we starting with drinking water? It was great, great kind of explanation for that. So thank you for that. So the next, if we don't have any Q&A on that, I did want to, there was something in the chat about the Zotero libraries, and I just wanted, someone said, well, why don't we have it organized maybe by instrument? That might really help things. I want to show you kind of a little bit more about that in particular. So right here you have, I've drilled down from, and if you have the, you can see on my my own computer, I've got my own app. And if I drag it into the screen, so this is the desktop version of everything. And you can see I've got a bunch of different stuff for microplastics and all kinds of topics. But that's just the app version, and it syncs. So here's all the different group libraries that I'm in. And you can see that everything will sync between online and my group library. So there's that to be aware of. But if you're on the web version, it'll look like this. So that's the same exact library. And if you go into a particular article, you can look and see that it has tags. You can add whatever tags you want. So if you want to add, let's say FTIR, you can. And then this means that it's already in there. So it'll give you tags that are similar to that one. So you don't create a new tag that's sort of similar, but not the same. And then sort of like a constrained drop-down list. Then it appear, all the different tags appear right here. This is for this, just this handful of articles. These are the tags. So if you want to search by tag, you can hit that and it'll give you everything that has that tag in it. Drinking water. So you can cross-reference different things that way. So I clicked on 2, now it gives me everything that's drinking water and FTIR. Okay, and again, this is not populated with the full references. I still have to do that. There's thousands and thousands of papers to add, and I just have to, it's a matter of dragging them over, but it actually takes up my entire computer. So I'm still working on that, but it's coming. So anyway, that is kind of, I can show you more. If I did this is my own library. You can see how many tags there are just for microplastics, and they're not these, you can tell there's a lot of overlap. Here's biosolids with a lowercase b, but then there's biosolids with an uppercase b. And so I select them both and I get it all here, that kind of thing. So anyway, you can play with that, add tags as you need. If you're a member of the group, and I just, there is a lot of trust involved that we don't, mess up the citations in the group library, because they are for the writers to use, and it puts out format and whatever you'd like. Also, I wanted you to know that there are, part of this is grabbing the article to begin with. So if we went to, let's say, Nature, and I don't know if that's the right, how about Science? Okay, and found a paper that we wanted to add. And this is totally off the cuff. I assume they have a microplastics paper. Oh, here's one on microplastics and human health. Let's say we want to grab that paper. All I do is click on the little Zotero extension that I've added to my browser. I click on it and then I say where it wants to go. I've got all my different libraries here, and whether it's the group library or So I could put it in the playbook. Let's say I'm going to put it in, I don't have a risk assessment folder, so I'll just put it in the top level. And maybe I'll tag it risk assessment. I don't know what tags it already has in it. It might already have that tag, but I'm going to say done. Now, this particular resource it's not open source. So it didn't drag it in. You have to have your credentials. If you're connected to a university, you can put your credentials into Zotero, and then it'll open up those floodgates to you, and you can get the articles straight to your Zotero. And then if I go back to my library and to the playbook, the top level, I should get there. Oh, that's not it. But of course, it's not going to work when I do my demo. But it would sync directly. It probably just needs to sync with my desktop. But here it is on my desktop version. Here's the article. And if I look at the tags, oh, there's risk assessment. Okay. And so if there are any, I'm not good about adding tags. So all of these tags that are in a lot of these articles they're pre-added. And so the Zotero key adds all of the information that you need for your citation. So when you're ready, you tell it how you want to export it, and it spits it out, and it can do it while you're writing your paper. So wonderful. So hopefully that answers the question about how we would organize these papers. That's kind of the idea. Is you can do different folders, but that's just to help you kind of one way of grouping them. But you can also do tags as another way. That's a lot more flexible. And then the top level is all of the subfolders combined. So if you can't find it in one subfolder, you don't have to go to, I would start with the top level folder. And then it also doesn't duplicate within, if you try to add something, let's say something's in one folder and you say, well, that's actually biosolids as well as methods, you can drag it into another folder and it won't duplicate the article, the hard copy itself. It'll just duplicate the link. And so you can cross-reference however you need to, and it's not going to mess things up. So I really like that about it as well. And going to back to our agenda. So our next steps, we're going to have, we're going to start forming our thoughts on what we're producing this fall for the, let's see, sorry, for the playbook. So here this is something that we presented before, just kind of a straw man of an outline. And you can see that none of this is drinking water specific. This was kind of the first cut of thoughts about what the playbook would contain, and it will be drinking water specific. We know which method we're using because that's what is going to be used for the drinking water monitoring process. So what has been kind of blessed by the state. So we're going to go there and make some friendly user tips and bring everything together. So we need people to get involved. Also clarifying what I was saying before about not wanting to be beholden to an annual deadline. Part of that, which Shelley and I have mentioned before, is we need funding to be to have that kind of real kind of state recognized support. That's something that if we had that funding, we had someone dedicated to be able to do that, then that is something that would be possible. But when you have people that are doing either in-kind support or volunteering their time, then it makes it really hard to do timely annual updates like that. So I hope that's clear. It's definitely, we want to be as topical and timely as possible with everything. But I think it's definitely possible to get something for this year. And I'm, you know, we're we're here for the long haul to lead this work group and to lead the playbook because we know it's very important. Any other questions? Okay, great. So the next thing you'll hear from us is an invitation to the next set of meetings. I think we talked about quarterly meetings just for our work group. And it'll probably, the initial one will go out to the entire subcommittee, but we will be forming a list of folks that just want to participate through with the playbook, so they know that it's not, you know, if they're interested in consumer messaging, they may not be interested in our subgroup in particular. I mentioned that also the participation component, because in our sister committee, the consumer messaging, they are having a hard time getting input from folks and contributions. So I want to make sure that you know, if you're interested, you're concerned about drinking water, you're concerned about the data, you're concerned about the methods, you're concerned about how this will all be brought together and how you're going to execute this in your lab. This is the place to start to contribute to that information so that we can get those concerns answered and addressed. So I hope that we have a lot of participation in making and writing this playbook. Shelley, anything else? We are doing well time-wise.
I can't think of anything.
Great. Scott?
I think you've covered a lot. Looking forward to hear feedback from anyone else.
Great. Yeah, again, if you have not already put your email address and maybe something about your prime area of interest, whether it's a matrix or a data or study design, anything like that, standard methods, put that in the chat and we'll make sure, and especially if it says drinking water, we want to make sure that you're involved in the playbook. And also, Ezra, thank you so much. Ezra created a poll, and you can click on that and it'll compile all of the information for us. So thank you, Ezra. And we'll go ahead and Scott, do you think we could share that link in a follow-up? We'll have you know, a summary of this meeting, and we could actually include that link to folks that weren't able to attend today.
That is a great idea.
Great, thank you. All right, well, thank you again, everyone. And we will be in touch with our next meeting, probably in the May timeline.